The Pathfinder 2e champion is a wholly defensive crusader built to be on the front lines protecting the rest of the party. And if this sounds super similar to paladins of the past, you'd be right to think that. The champion is Pathfinder 2e's version of the paladin, but it has come a long way in differentiating itself from its spellcasting fighter origins. While they do still have some magic at their disposal, they are much more focused on what they can do on the front lines to assist and defend not only their allies, but also themselves in the thick of battle. Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to my deep dive into the remastered Pathfinder 2e champion class. Now, I know a lot of you have been wishing for me to cover this class ever since the remaster came out, and I am here, but I do have a wish of my own, and that's a wish that I had a super cool and nerdy button-down shirt to wear for the rest of this review. Whoa! I guess dreams really do come true at geektropical.com, who made this shirt and where you can get shirts. What do you mean that was a bad take? No, I'm not doing another take. Fix it in post. No, I only do one take. What don't you get about that? The same goes for ad reads. Yes, I'll cover the rest of the information, but we do this my way. I am the star, okay? Now sit down and let me do my job. Geek Tropical is proud to offer over 200 nerdy, geeky, video game-inspired designs for you to wear in comfortable, button-down fashion, with over 80 of these designs being inspired by D&D and TTRPGs as a whole. That's how you sell a product. Geek Tropical is a local business here in the USA and is proud to state that all of the artwork for all of the designs on their shirts are all licensed by actual artists, and those artists continue getting royalties anytime any of their shirts' designs sell. They've got a firm anti-AI stance, so there will be no automatically generated designs, so every single shirt you wear, you can proudly know was designed by a human for a human. And because Geek Tropical loves the Nonat One's audience so much, they have secured a 90%... What? What do you mean we can't do 90% off? Oh, too much over-under. I've secured you a 10% off discount code if you use my link in the description or code NONAT1s, that's NONAT1S, at checkout, 10% off your entire order from geektropical.com. All jokes aside from this whole skit, I do really love these shirts. I wear them constantly. They're super comfortable and really, really light for those wonderful summer months. Plus, I've gotten more compliments wearing these shirts than anything else in my wardrobe. People adore the creativity of these shirts, and I am no exception. Thank you so much, Geek Tropical, for sponsoring this video. Now, where's my freaking paycheck? The champion is a strength or dexterity-based class. However, there are some problems with dexterity as your key ability modifier, as champions don't get a lot of ways to utilize that. They're definitely built with heavy armor in mind, so a high dexterity score isn't necessarily useful. That's not to say you can't build a dexterity champion, though. There is some ranged weapon support, and a high dexterity score would support that, but for the most part, most champions are going to be going strength with the option of dex for some niche builds. They get 10 hit points per level, plus their constitution modifier, and they begin the game trained in perception, expert in fortitude and will saves, and only trained in reflex saves. They don't get a whole ton of skills, only being trained in religion, and then one additional skill based on their chosen deity, and then 2 skills plus their intelligence modifier. If you're not putting any points into intelligence, you're not going to have a whole lot of skills to play with as a champion. Champions are trained in simple weapons and martial weapons, and every single type of armor, including unarmored. So if you are playing a dex-based champion, you can still get decent armor class even while wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. They are trained in spell attack modifiers and spell DCs, which might come up occasionally depending on how you utilize their focus spells, and of course they are trained in the champion class DC. The first thing a champion needs to pick is their deity. Now, this isn't nearly as restrictive as it used to be before the remaster, because if you're unaware, when Pathfinder 2e got remastered, they removed the concept of alignment entirely. So now deities no longer have specific restrictions for which alignments their followers need to be. If you are a categorically lawful evil person, but you never break any of Sarenrae's anathema, then you can worship Sarenrae because you might be evil in the eyes of other people, but you are not betraying your deity's calling. I think this opens up the door for the most creative character concept imaginable, which is a technically good champion who follows a good god, but follows them entirely through loopholes, where they are still carrying out the god's will while also doing traditionally evil things, which would be super fun. Regardless of which deity you pick, it's going to determine two things for you. The first is a bonus skill proficiency, like I mentioned before, but the big decision that is still a little restrictive is the sanctification options of your deity. If you're unaware, in the remaster, sanctification is sort of the new version of alignment. There are 3 different sanctifications: holy, unholy, and neither. So your more traditionally good gods will probably be holy, your more traditionally evil gods will probably be unholy, but a lot of these gods have the option of either one or neither. Depending on the sanctification that your deity imparts unto you, their champion, it will limit your selection of some feats and subclasses. Each sanctification of holy and unholy also comes with their own unique edicts that you must follow that coincide with your god's anathema. If you break any of these enough, you will lose all of your champion abilities. Holy champions must protect the innocent if they are physically able to do so, and if they do not, it will be considered anathema, and they have the direct anathema: don't commit murder. Unholy champions have the edict of never do something that does not benefit yourself. If you ever perform a purely altruistic act, like giving something away with nothing in return, you could actually lose your champion powers for doing that. And an unholy champion can never put another person's needs before their own or the needs of their deity. Them and their deity are all that matter at the end of the day. As a little bonus, if you are holy or unholy, that trait is applied to all strikes made with your weapon. So if something has a weakness to the holy trait, your attacks trigger that weakness automatically if you are a holy champion, which is a super cool new upgrade. All champions also get the deific weapon feature, where if your deity's chosen weapon is a simple weapon, then while you wield it, it is considered 1 die size bigger. If you've got a 1d6 short sword, which is the deific weapon of, I don't know, this deity, then that d6 short sword becomes a d8 when you wield it. Additionally, if the deity's chosen weapon is an advanced weapon, then it becomes a martial weapon while you wield it, allowing you to use your martial weapon proficiency for it, which is also phenomenal. I love this feature. It just gives champions so much room to use whatever weapon they want to, especially if they really want to represent their deity as much as possible. New to the remaster is the champion's aura, which by default is just a 15-foot zone around the champion. There is technically something magical about it, but by default it does nothing, and is simply used to determine the range of the champion's reactions and some other abilities. This aura can be deactivated and reactivated for 1 action. Now for the biggest choice you need to make as a champion, you have to pick your subclass, your champion cause. What drives you to combat, what drives you to adventure, and how do you specifically protect those around you or yourself? There are currently 7 available causes for champions to pick from. 2 are restricted to holy, 2 are restricted to unholy, and 3 of them can be taken by any champion regardless of sanctification. Let's jump into these. Each cause is going to come with a lot of different stuff, the first being that cause's edicts and anathema. For the sake of time, I'm not going to cover these in these videos since those are purely roleplay aesthetic. If you want to know what your edict and anathema is, it'll still be on screen. If you're playing one of those champions, always do what the edict says, never do what the anathema says. Easy stuff. Other than that, each of these causes is going to give you your unique champion's reaction. Champions are built around using this specific reaction to interact with the battlefield when it is not their turn, and each cause gets a slightly different effect, though they're all very similar in how they work. And then at levels 9 and 11, your subclass gets additional upgrades, which I'll go over right now. Let's get started with the Desecration Unholy cause. A Desecration champion doesn't care who they hurt as long as they profit in the end. Their champion's reaction can only be used when they personally take damage from an enemy within their champion's aura. When you use your reaction, you gain resistance to the triggering damage equal to 2 plus half your level, which is minimum 1. So right at level 1, you can just reduce the damage you take by 3 points, and all of your strikes against that target that triggered your reaction on your next turn take an extra point of of spirit damage. The extra damage doesn't scale that much, only the 2 bonus damage at level 9 and 3 bonus damage at level 16, but hey, damage is damage, and having spirit damage at level 1 is really cool. This is one of my personal favorite champion reactions. I've always wanted to play a totally selfish champion who's kind of a coward and is on the battlefield to serve some evil deity, but is too scared to actually do a lot, so he just protects himself the whole time. At 9th level, the damage reduction of your reaction increases to your charisma modifier plus half your level. This is going to be a solid +2, eventually +3 extra damage reduction in the long run. Really a nice upgrade. And at 11th level, when you use your Desecration Champion's reaction, then all creatures within your champion's aura take a -1 status penalty to attack rolls against you until the start of your next turn. I just love how cowardly the Desecration Champion is. It is the antithesis of most other champion designs in this game. Champions are made to assist their allies and redirect attacks to themselves. The Desecrator says, I don't care about you, just don't hurt my pretty face. The brand new Grandeur cause, specific to holy champions, is all about utilizing light and beauty to stun your enemies. Flash of Grandeur is their reaction, and if an enemy damages your ally and they are both within your champion's aura, then your ally gains resistance to the triggering damage equal to 2 plus your full level. The target who triggered this is also affected by Revealing Light for 1 round. At 9th level, the creature who triggered your reaction is also afflicted by persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier, and this persistent damage cannot be removed as long as they are afflicted by the revealing light that you initially put on them. Meaning, because revealing light lasts for 1 full round, they will not be able to get rid of their persistent damage for the first round. And if they re-trigger something, then that persistent revealing light is going to be reapplied by another flash of grandeur, meaning they cannot get rid of their persistent spirit damage. Good stuff. And at 11th level, along with the triggering creature, all creatures within your champion's aura are all affected by revealing light when you use your reaction. The Iniquity cause is the other unholy champion cause, and just likes lying. This is sort of a glass cannon champion that wants to just burst as much damage back to their target as possible without worrying about their own well-being. As a reaction, if a creature damages you and is within your champion's aura, you can take an extra 1d6 damage to force them to take 1d6 spirit damage. And this all increases by 1d6 at 5th, 9th, 12th, 16th, and 19th level. The problem is the damage you take also increases, so it's still hard to recommend this ability. At level 5, if you take 2d6 extra and you roll 11 damage, but then they take 2d6 and you roll 3 damage, then you just took 11 extra to deal 3. And in things like boss fights or horde encounters where you're trying to keep your hit points high, it's hard to find a reason that this would be super useful. Now you do get some good bonus damage on your next attacks on the following turn, 2 extra spirit damage on all of your melee strikes against the triggering creature, and this increases to 4 and then 6 at higher levels. At 9th level it gets a lot better because the target is almost guaranteed to take more damage than you are. As long as they take damage from your reaction, they are also afflicted by persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. This only can be triggered, however, by the initial reaction reflection damage, not by the damage you deal on your strikes on your next turn. And at 11th level, it gets a little bit better again. The creature who triggered it still takes the full damage, and all other enemies within your champion's aura take half the amount of damage that the triggering creature took. At 11th level, you're dealing, 3d6? So if you hit them for 10 damage, every other creature within 15 feet of you will take 5 damage. It's not horrible, and it's just a permanent upgrade without you having to do anything, so you can't really complain. The Justice cause is the big macho, I'm on the front lines and I'm gonna beat you up for hurting my friends champion. Retributive Strike is almost everyone's favorite reaction. As a reaction, if an enemy hurts your ally and they are both within your champion's aura, then your ally not only gains resistance to the triggering damage equal to 2 plus your level, but you also get to make a full-on reactive strike against that enemy as long as they are within your weapon's reach. That's just it. Not only do you reduce the damage your ally takes, but you get another full bonus reactive strike, which is just worth so much, especially at low levels. The upgrade at 9th level allows your strike, if it hits, to also inflict persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. But the 11th level is where it goes wild. All allies who are also within your champion's aura can make a reactive strike against this triggering creature, granted at -5. But if you, the barbarian, and the rogue are all surrounding this thing and it attacks the rogue, you can reduce the damage the rogue takes, you get to strike, and then your friends also get to strike at -5. Phenomenal. Granted, this does spend their reaction. The Liberation Cause. It's really hard to figure out what they stand for. As a reaction, if a creature damages or grabs your ally and they are both within your champion's aura, you can use your reaction. If your ally took any damage from this, they do gain resistance to that damage equal to 2 plus your level, and then they can make an immediate escape check against the thing confining them. That could have been better explained. This doesn't just apply to being grabbed either. This applies to immobilization, restraint, even paralysis. And when you use your reaction, they can immediately make a new saving throw against the thing confining them or to escape from something that has grabbed them. Amazing reaction. And if they do escape or they were already not restrained, they can then take a step action for free. The 9th level upgrade is fine if the creature who triggered your reaction was responsible for restraining your ally in any way. They take persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. And the 11th level upgrade is fine. You and everybody within your champion's aura can step as a free action when you use your reaction, even if your original ally could not escape themselves. Everybody just gets a free step action. Pretty cool. The Obedience Champion, because who doesn't want to play a power-hungry dictator some days? If an enemy within your champion's aura damages you, you look them dead in the eye and say, kneel. They have two actions. They can either kneel, dropping prone as a free action, or if they refuse, they just flat out take 1d6 mental damage. This damage scales at levels 5, 12, 16, and 19 up by 1d6 every single time. There is no bad outcome here. When you use this reaction, the target is either dropping prone, making them off guard and forcing them to make a move action to stand up, which might trigger a reactive strike from a nearby fighter, or they're just taking free damage from your reaction. And all your strikes against the triggering creature get +1 spirit damage, increasing to +2 spirit damage at level 9 and 3 spirit damage at level 16. I definitely wasn't just reading it off the PDF. Why would you think that? 9th level upgrade is just if the creature refuses to kneel, they take persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. Incredible. And at 11th level, your command affects all enemy creatures within your champion's aura, forcing them to either kneel or refuse. However, if they refuse, they only take the minimum damage, so it's just going to be 1 point of damage per damage die on your reaction, so it's still not bad. You know, you're looking at like 3 damage to everything in there, plus the 3d6 to the triggering creature if they all refuse, or maybe they drop prone because they don't necessarily know how powerful it is. This is where it's going to get really interesting of metagame versus roleplay for the GM. You know, if the enemies saw their leader refuse and then get racked with mental damage, would they choose to kneel, not knowing that the offshoot area damage is less? You know, I feel like GMs are going to say, oh, they'll never kneel. Why would I kneel instead of taking 2 points of damage? But you have to sort of read the scenario and go from there. And the Redemption Champion, every GM's worst nightmare because it is so freaking good. As a reaction, if a creature damages your ally and they are both within your champion's aura, you tell that creature they have a chance to repent, and they can either repent or refuse. If they choose to repent, your ally takes no damage, completely ignores all damage dealt by the attack. If they refuse, not only does your ally gain resistance to their damage equal to 2 plus your level, but the target also becomes enfeebled too. Now this won't affect the damage dealt by the initial attack because it already dealt its damage, but enfeebled 2 until the end of their next turn means if they're strength based, that's -2 to accuracy and -2 to damage, and -2 to athletics. It's such a good ability with feat support down the line to make it even better. And then at 9th level, if they choose to refuse, you guessed it, persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. And at 11th level, you get a really interesting niche use for this reaction. If the creature refuses to repent, you can choose to have the damage resistance apply to every single allied creature within your champion's aura. So for example, if for some reason you're standing next to an enemy wizard and they drop a fireball at their feet and you've got like 3 other allies all within that blast, you can trigger your reaction on one of your allies and choose to use the Exalted effect to give everybody resistance to the effect equal to your level instead of 2 plus your level. Still, if you're level 11, reducing the damage everyone takes from that fireball by 11 points each, you can mitigate up to like 44 damage with that, maybe more if you were all clumped together. Just remember that the enemy who triggered this does need to be inside of your aura. And there is all 7 cause subclasses for the champion. There is a lot to pick from here. At the end of the day, it just changes how you choose to react to the battlefield, but there's a lot of unique choices here, and they've all got some cool feat support. So before we get into the feats, let's go over all of their class features from levels 2 through 20. Before we get into their actual 2 to 20 class features, there's one more level 1 class feature that I definitely didn't forget to record, and I'm recording this in post to make the video flow together. Well, that's ridiculous. Devotion spells. All champions start the game with 1 focus point and 1 focus spell that they can cast, obviously using that focus point. All deities in this game come with what's known as a divine font, and it will either say heal, harm, or both. As a champion, this is what determines your starting focus spell. If it is a heal font, you start with Lay on Hands. If it is a harm font, you start with Touch of the Void. And if it's both, you can choose either one. Now, regardless of your deity's divine font, you can opt out of choosing either of those and instead choose Shield of the Spirit. Let's go over all 3 of these right now. Lay on Hands is the classic champion healing spell going as far back as paladins have existed. In this game, for 1 action, you touch a willing adjacent living target and restore 6 hit points per rank of the spell. So effectively every 2 character levels, this goes up by 6 more healing. In addition to that, the living creature you touched also gains a +2 status bonus to armor class until the start of your next turn. Alternatively, you can actually use Lay on Hands offensively. If you target an undead creature, they're going to get a saving throw against 1d6 vitality damage per rank of the spell. It's important to note that most undead have a built-in weakness to vitality damage, so while it might look like 1d6, it's actually going to be a good chunk more. They also take a -2 status penalty to their AC for 1 round as long as they fail the saving throw. Touch of the Void is the exact same as Lay on Hands, except the polar opposite. It heals undead for 6 hit points per rank, and it hurts the living for 1d6 void damage per rank of the spell, and gives them a status penalty to armor class. What makes Touch of the Void so great is that you can inflict that status penalty to armor class on a living creature. Let's say you're already flanking with the rogue. They're already off guard, inflicting a -2 circumstance penalty to armor class. Touch of the Void, 1 action, this is a saving throw. This is not an attack roll, so your attack penalty is fine. They fail the saving throw, they're now at a net -4 armor class, -2 circumstance from flanking, -2 status from the Touch of the Void penalty. So you Touch of the Void, and then you're attacking them with crazy accuracy. The only downside is you can't stack this with things like the target being sickened or frightened, since those are also status penalties, but this is a better status penalty than like Sickened 1. This is going to be so reliable to set up and fish for critical hits. Now, Shield of the Spirit is the new hotness, and everyone wants to play around with it. You can choose this regardless of what deity you worship. For 1 action, you use Raise a Shield, so already this is saving you an action, because for spending the focus point, you are raising your shield as part of casting this spell. But what this does is it basically gives a slight bonus like your shield to every ally within 15 feet of you. Specifically, every ally in your champion's aura, so that's going to start at 15 feet, but there are feats to increase the feat width. Until the start of your next turn, all allies within your champion's aura just get a +1 status bonus to armor class as long as they are in the aura. If they leave it, it goes away, but if they enter it, they gain the bonus. Additionally, every time an enemy attacks any of your allies within your aura, that enemy just takes 1d4 spirit damage. There's no saving throw, it doesn't even matter if they miss. If they try to hurt your allies while Shield of the Spirit is active, the target enemy takes damage. This is really good if you need one big round of turtling up, or if you're already in melee with the big boss monster and your rogue and fighter are right there with you, then you can just pop Shields of the Spirit, raising your own shield, giving them a little bit of bonus to armor class, and then if the boss attacks either of them instead of you, you just dealt free damage. Is it a lot of damage? No. In fact, the damage scales horribly. It only scales by 1d4 damage every 2 spell ranks. So this is going to do 1d4 damage until character level 5. But it's spirit damage, and depending on your sanctification, that could possibly trigger some weaknesses, so it's not always going to just be a flat 1d4. I love this focus spell. I think it's a super cool addition, and I love that champions now have an alternative to Lay on Hands or Touch of the Void. At level 2, the champion gains a skill feat, and right at level 3, they already get a totally unique class feature, Blessing of the Devoted. Flavor-wise, this is your deity granting you a boon of a permanent upgrade, either to your weapons, your shields, or your speed. Blessed Armament allows you to imbue one of your weapons with a rune at the start of your daily preparations, and every single day, you can choose a different rune if you want to. You can choose between things like Fearsome, Ghost Touch, Returning, Shifting, and Vitalizing. The big thing that holds Blessed Armament back is that it doesn't say this rune doesn't count against your rune maximum. This means that if you want to use it at all, you need to already own a +1 weapon, which if you're level 3, you probably have a +1 weapon. But it also counts to your runic maximum. Remember, you can only have as many weapon runes as the plus modifier on your weapon. A +1 weapon can have 1 rune, a +2 weapon can have 2 runes, and this is going to be one of them. So it's great that you can just sort of pick the rune you want every single day, but if you want to play a champion with a flaming longsword, even at low levels, if you take Blessed Armament, you can't have flaming and your Blessed Armament rune until you have a +2 weapon, which is at like level 5 or 7 or something. The Blessed Shield upgrade is absolutely nutty. It implies the reinforcing rune to one shield you have. This rune takes your shield stats to the moon, increasing its hardness by 3 and its hit points by 44, up to a maximum of 8 hardness, which is the same hardness as the magic item, the Sturdy Shield. So once again, yes, you can get the same bonus effects of this boon from just finding or buying a magic item, but this basically gives it to you for free automatically on any shield you ever find and use. Additionally, if you apply the reinforcing rune to your shield or get a sturdy shield yourself, then this boon will instead increase the hardness of that shield by an extra +1. And TLDR, hardness reduces damage you take by that amount as long as you're blocking with it. Very nice stuff. And the best part of this boon is that it levels up with you. Every time you reach the appropriate level for the next rank of reinforcing rune, your shield will automatically gain that new rank. It's decent, but it is hard to recommend either of those over the third and potentially most useful option, Blessed Speed. Sorry, Blessed Swiftness, very different word. You get a +5 foot status bonus to your speed, just permanently and forever. You know, you can always buy reinforcing runes, and you can buy weapon runes. You can't typically buy a permanent 5-foot speed bonus. And this applies to a mount if you are mounted, and all allies within your champion's aura all gain a bonus +2 status bonus to their defenses against reactions. So if someone provokes a reactive strike while they're in your aura, they get a +2 status bonus to their armor class. This is a weirdly confusingly worded thing, as it says +2 status bonus to all defenses, and we've never really seen plus bonus to defenses before. I assume that's just armor class, because on the proficiency page, defenses lists your armor proficiency, but I don't know. I don't think this applies to saving throws and resistances. I don't think those are considered defenses, but I could be wrong. This is a really weirdly worded aspect of the book. So yeah, it's hard to recommend the first two. They're still good because you get the rune you need and want immediately and for free, which should not be underestimated, but the Blessed Speed is so much harder to come by as a character, and that permanent bonus is fantastic. And the rest of the champion's level up features are all pretty box standard. You got general feats, skill increases, ancestry feats, then expert in weaponry at level 5, expert proficiency in armor at level 7, alongside weapon specialization at level 7, which will give you an extra 2 damage on all weapons you are expert in. Now level 9 is massive for champions. Your class DC increases to expert proficiency, your spellcasting DC increases to expert proficiency, your reflex saves increase to expert proficiency, and your fortitude saves increase to master proficiency, allowing you to automatically crit succeed any normal fortitude save success. Plus, you gain access to the Relentless Reaction feature from your subclass. At level 11, their will saves increase to Master, allowing them to auto-crit normal successes. Their perception checks increase to Expert proficiency, and they gain access to the level 11 subclass feature, obviously from their chosen subclass. Level 13 is Master proficiency in both weapons and armor, and then level 15 is Greater Weapon specialization for that little bit of extra bonus damage, I believe dealing 6 bonus damage with all Master proficiency weapons. Level 17 increases their class DC and spellcasting DC to Master proficiency, and increases their armor proficiency to Legendary, one of only a very small handful of classes that can reach Legendary armor proficiency, and by level 17 no less. And then at level 19, every single champion learns Hero's Defiance as a focus spell. Hero's Defiance is a super upgraded version of that classic ability that lets you withstand a hit that would normally drop you to 0 hit points. As a free action, as long as you have a focus point and an attack would drop you to 0 hit points, you say, no thank you, and you heal for 6d8 plus 20 as a free action. Now, you heal this first, and then you take the hit from the attack. So if you're getting hit for 70 damage, and this would not heal you up above 70, you do still drop back down to unconscious like you would have anyway. But there are a lot of times that this will keep you up and fighting, hopefully long enough for somebody else to heal you. The downside is you can't just save all your focus points for this. You can only do this once per refocus, which remember is 10 minutes out of combat to get your focus points back. It also, interestingly, cannot be used if the triggering attack had the death trait. Something like Disintegrate, you can't just defy disintegration, which is the name of my heavy metal band. And that's all the champion class features. Now, before we get into the feats, I do want to take a second here to talk about a strength and weakness of the champion as a whole. As you've seen from their class features, champions don't get a whole lot of, tangible, activatable abilities from their raw class. Instead, they get some of the highest proficiency bumps in the game. Master in 2 saving throws, mastery in weapons, legendary in armor, all of that is wild. Sure, reflex saves and perception never go above expert, but all of this is why the champion is one of the most recommended base classes if you plan to take archetypes. Whether you're using the free archetype feature or not, the champion's base upgrades in weapon, armor, and saving throw proficiency all carries it so well that if you took no feats on a champion, they would still be useful in combat as a meat shield and a decent damage outputter. So if you are playing a champion, don't be afraid to look into archetypes. Even if you're not playing with the free archetype variant, sometimes adding archetypes to the champion can be just as strong, if not stronger, than some of their actual class feats. Not to say their class feats are awful, in fact, let's get into them to talk about how they are. Starting off with a feat that is specifically for the Grandeur Cause champion, Brilliant Flash. Whenever you use your champion's reaction, the creature who triggered it is automatically off guard for 1 full round. This means until the end of their next turn, they are off guard, including against ranged attacks, which I've said multiple times on this channel, getting something off guard for your ranged allies is really hard to do and pretty uncommon in the system. So if you can give your ranger, and more importantly, your spellcasters, that -2 to the target's armor class from being off guard, fantastic. And there's no saving throw against this either. It is just, when you use it, they are off guard. Amazing. Oh my god, a Grandeur champion with a ranged rogue would go hard. Defensive Advance is amazing action economy for the champion. You raise your shield and stride for 2 actions, and as long as you end this stride adjacent to an enemy, you can make a melee strike as well. 2 actions to move, strike, and raise shield is incredible, and if you are using a shield as a champion, this might save you from the desperate action economy of early game champions. It has become a joke in my campaign groups where all the champions raise shield. No matter what, they raise shield. Defensive Advance at least allows you to clump a stride and an attack alongside the raising shield and save you an action per turn. Fantastic. Deity's Domain. You gain the domain spell of one of your worshipped deities' domains. No, I'm not going over them in this video. There's a lot of them. Look! One of these days I'll make a domain spell remastered video, but there's so many and I don't want to talk about them. My main problem with domain spells is most of them are hyper-situational and not that powerful. I would call domain spells some of the weakest focus spells in the game. When you compare them to things like Lay on Hands or Shield of the Spirit and stuff, you just don't get the same thing out of them. Desperate Prayer. As a free action once per day, you gain a focus point back. You say, please, Daddy Deity, can I have more magic today? And he says, okay, but just this once today. If you really need Lay on Hands, or you really want to use Touch of the Void that turn, or Shields of the Spirit, you can use this, get your focus point back, and do it a second time in that first level 1 combat. Not bad at all. It's obviously a little bit weaker based on how many combats you have per day. If you're in a campaign with 5 combats per day, this isn't that good. If you're in a campaign that fights once per day and you can use this basically every encounter, phenomenal feat. There is one caveat to this feat, though. You have to use that focus point that turn. If you don't spend the focus point, it goes away at the end of that turn. I think that's a totally fair limitation. It's a free action anyway, so you're only going to use it when you want to use your spell for your next action anyway, so it doesn't really make a big deal of it, but big bad deal, big bad deal, big deal, bad. Faithful Steed. You gain an animal companion. Preferably it has the mount trait for the flavor, but it is not a requirement. Additionally, all of your mount's strikes gain the holy or unholy trait just like your own from your sanctification. Very freaking cool. If you're playing an evil, quote-unquote evil, champion, you could have possibly like a flaming hell horse that has unholy clip-clop attacks, which is super cool. Iron Repercussions for the Obedience cause is a crazy upgrade. When someone refuses to kneel based on your reaction and they would take the 1d6 damage, you can choose to just make it persistent instead of normal. Same amount of damage, and it is going to guaranteed happen at the end of their turn. So you are exchanging direct upfront instant damage for potentially double or triple or quadruple damage if they keep failing to remove the persistent. And it's fantastic because if they do remove it, remember, they take the damage first and then they roll to remove it. So even if they take the damage and remove it that same turn, if they trigger your reaction again, you can just reactivate the persistent damage. And if they didn't get rid of the persistent damage and they're already afflicted by it, you can just hit them with the normal damage. This is a crazy upgrade. Honestly, the fact that this is level 1 blows my mind. Like, honestly, there are, like, level 10 plus feats and spells that just inflict, like, 5 persistent damage. This is going to inflict 1d6 persistent damage 100% of the time. Wild. Nimble Reprisal is really, really good on a lot of champions and basically required if you're that weirdo playing a dex-based shortbow champion. This feat can only be taken by the Justice cause, and when you do use your reaction to attack the target who hurt your friend, you can use a ranged weapon instead of a melee weapon. Just remember that even if you're using a shortbow, they do still need to be in your champion's aura, so them and your ally both need to be within 15 feet of you, and you have a bow out. But additionally, this is a great upgrade for melee-based champions, especially if you don't have a weapon with reach. This allows you, if something triggers your champion's reaction and you get your melee strike against them, you can take a 5-foot step first and then attack them, effectively giving you 10 feet reach with your reaction, or 15-foot reach if you already have a reach weapon. Phenomenal. The Desecration cause gains ongoing selfishness, which is okay at best. When you use your reaction to give yourself resistance to the triggering attack, you get continued resistance until the end of that same turn, only equal to half as much as the original resistance granted. So at level 1, you would reduce the damage taken by the first attack by 3, and then if they happen to hit you again that same turn, which is unlikely, especially if you have a shield and like heavy armor, they're probably not going to hit you twice, but it can happen. You would gain half the 3 resistance, which Pathfinder always rounds down, so it basically just gives you 1 damage resistance to the same target for the rest of its turn. This is obviously going to get a little bit better with level, and especially once you get the upgrade that uses your charisma modifier instead of a flat 2, it gets even better. But most of the time, this is going to reduce a good chunk on your reaction and then a very small chunk of damage resistance if they happen to hit you again. It's not useless, it's just not that exciting. Hey all, Editor Nonat here like a week and a half later because apparently I forgot to go over Unimpeded Step when I was recording this, but it's super simple. All it does is that when Liberation Champions use their reaction on their ally, that ally can take their free action step even if it's into or across difficult terrain, uneven ground, greater difficult terrain, or anything like that. Basically, they can always step. And once you get your level 11 upgrade to the subclass, everybody affected can take that step, regardless of the difficult terrain. That's it. Nice and easy. You look great today. Have a good one. The Iniquity Cause gains Vicious Vengeance, which is a very required feat if you want to make sure that the enemy takes more damage than you do. When you use your reaction to take 1d6 extra damage, you can deal an extra +1 damage, or plus damage equal to the number of damage dice you rolled. So if you use this reaction at a higher level and you take 3d6, the target takes 3d6 +3 damage. It just weighs the odds a little bit more in your favor by giving them a little bit of flat bonus damage taken. It's fine, you know, it's never going to be that much bonus damage. You're taking 1d6, they're taking 1d6 +1. Yeah, statistically they should take more than you, but there's still a really high likelihood that you roll a 1, 2, or 3 on their damage and a 4, 5, or 6 on your damage, and you're still coming out negative. And the Redemption Cause gains Weight of Guilt. If the enemy chooses not to refuse and finishes their attack, then the champion can choose to make that target stupefied to instead of enfeebled to, which if the target is a spellcaster, that is disgusting. As a reminder, any creature that is stupefied has to roll a flat DC 5 plus the stupefied value or lose any spell they cast. So if they want to cast anything, they have to roll a 7 or higher flat check, or they lose the spell slot and the actions spent. Stupefied is an amazing condition. It also reduces will saves. At level 2, champions have 2 options to pick from. Remember when I said champions are really good for archetypes? They have Divine Grace, which is fantastic. If you're about to make a saving throw, you can spend your reaction to give yourself +2 to the saving throw. This is sort of like raising your shield against a save rather than your armor class, which is pretty neat. Just remember, you have to use this before you roll. You can't roll, see your number, and then add 2. You need to spend this reaction, which means you can't use your champion's reaction that round, and it might not even matter. It's okay. It's definitely always nice to get a bonus to any saving throw, but on a class that is based around their reaction, taking a low-level extra reaction is a little bit hard to balance. The other option is Divine Health, which is the classic, you're a holy crusader and poison doesn't mean nothing to you. You get a +2 status, bonus to all saving throws against poisons and diseases, including flat checks to remove persistent poison damage. That's not to be underestimated. +2 to a flat check is massive. Even nicer is all allies in your champion's aura just get half that bonus. They get +1 to all saving throws against diseases and poisons. They get +1 to flat checks to recover from persistent poison. I do love abilities that grant you a bonus and give your allies a little bit of that bonus. That always feels nice. Where this feat really shines is that from now on, if you ever get a normal success against a poison or disease, it counts as a critical success instead. Now, as a champion, once your fortitude hits master, you're going to get that ability anyway, but getting this at level 2 instead of like level 9 or whatever it was is pretty damn nice. And once you get the Sacred Body class feature, it turns all critical failures against poisons and diseases into normal failures. You can no longer completely crit fail against any poison effect. Fantastic. Aura of Courage is one of the new aura feats, which, as you might guess, upgrades your champion's aura. This is only available to wholly sanctified champions, and it's okay. Whenever you become frightened, you reduce the frightened condition you receive by 1, which is nice, and if an ally ever ends their turn inside your champion's aura, their frightened condition reduces by 2 instead of by 1. This gets a lot more useful at higher levels when you start fighting bosses that might have things like Frightening Presence that just auto-frightens your entire party at the start of a combat. That just happened in my Kingmaker campaign. We cliffhangered at the beginning of the boss fight, I crit failed my will save, and I'm frightened 4. I'm gonna die. It's definitely a nice upgrade, you know, it's passive, you don't need to activate it, it is just always there. If your allies get scared, they can come snuggle up to their champion and reduce their frightened condition. Decent. And Unholy Champions get sort of the opposite with Aura of Despair. This is a fascinating little ability. On its own, the base effect is not that great. Any enemies within your champion's aura take a -1 status penalty to saving throws against fear effects. That's fine. But what makes this amazing is that any enemy that ends its turn while in your champion's aura doesn't reduce its frightened condition below 1. So what you could do with this is make a very strength athletics heavy champion that focuses on grappling and holding targets in place and demoralizing and causing them to be scared and frightened, or have like a wizard with the fear spell and you can just hold them there and they are permanently frightened 1 for the entire combat as long as you can keep them in place. Fantastic little combo there. I don't think it's as strong as Aura of Courage, but it is pretty nice. Cruelty is an okay little upgrade to Touch of the Void for unholy champions. It just allows you to spend 2 actions to cast it instead of 1, and if they fail their save, they are enfeebled 1 for 1 full minute, which is not to be underrated. It's a full minute debuff for 1 saving throw. It just feels really bad if they do make their save, because not only did you spend the focus point, but you spent an extra action. I think what would send this feat to the moon is if, similar to the heal spell, this gave Touch of the Void a range of 30 feet. It would turn it into sort of a focus spell enfeebling ray, or whatever it's called in the remaster. It would be really, really cool to see. On its own, though, it's just not that effective. Also, they're enfeebled too if they crit fail, if that makes you think it's any better. Mercy upgrades Lay on Hands. Are you seeing a theme here of holy and unholy champions getting very, very polar opposite upgrades? Now when you cast Lay on Hands, you can use 2 actions instead of 1, and it allows you to counteract 1 condition currently affecting the target. However, the conditions you can personally counteract are based on your choice in this feat. You have to choose Mercy of the Mind, Body, or Grace. But you can take this feat multiple times to pick up different types of Mercy. Mercy of the Body allows you to counteract Blind, Dazzled, Deafened, Enfeebled, and Sickened. Mercy of the Grace allows you to counteract Clumsy, Grabbed, which is pretty good, and Paralyzed. And Mercy of the Mind allows you to counteract Fleeing, Frightened, and Stupefied. Honestly, all 3 of these have their merits. They all come with a very, very common status effect they can help. Frightened is one of the most common status effects in the game, so Mercy of the Mind is great for that. But being grabbed can be pretty hard to get away from, so Mercy of Grace is fantastic for that, but also Sickened is annoying to get rid of, so Mercy of Body is also fantastic. There's no wrong answer here, and I wouldn't blame you if you took this feat 2 or even 3 times to be able to counteract anything. And finally, Security upgrades Shields of the Spirit. By spending 2 actions to cast it instead of 1, you grant 1 ally within your aura a spirit shield that follows them around. So even if they leave your champion's aura during this next round, they still keep the benefits of it. That 1 little +1 status bonus to armor class and damage back to attackers. So this is really great to start a fight off. At level 6, you get Expand Aura, which could be really good, but it's a little bit action expensive. By spending an action, your champion's aura doubles in radius until the start of your next turn. If you've got some decent passive abilities, you can combine this with something like Defensive Assault, so that for your 3 actions, you could expand your aura and stride and raise your shield and strike. I think that's a fantastic turn for a champion. But otherwise, if you want to do something like expand your aura and cast Shields of the Spirit, that's 2, maybe even 3 of your actions right there. The nice thing is that at levels 10 and 16, this does upgrade. Once you're level 10, the 1 action expands it for a full minute, which is almost always an entire encounter. Most encounters do not go beyond 10 rounds. And then once you're level 16, it is a permanent doubling. It is on 30 feet as long as you want it to be. So it's unfortunate that you have to take this as a sort of mid-tier, mid-level feat, but once you get past level 10, it's amazing. Loyal Warhorse, your steed becomes a mature companion. Neat. Reactive Strike. You gain the Reactive Strike reaction to attack any creature next to you that uses a manipulate or move action or attempts a ranged attack while within reach of your melee strike. And specifically, if it was a manipulate action, like trying to cast a spell, and you get a critical reactive strike, it completely interrupts and disrupts that whole action. This is really, really nice, but remember that you are a champion and you only have 1 reaction per round at level 6. So if you use your reactive strike, it means you can't use your champion's reaction. This is fine and super cool to have, but remember that your champion only has 1 reaction per round, and if you use it on reactive strike, it means you can't use it on your champion's reaction. So while it's cool to have reactive strike, you might be better off protecting your allies unless you really feel like you need to end combat faster. Shield Warden is an upgrade to Shield Block. Now, if an adjacent ally gets hit by a strike, you can use your Shield Block reaction to reduce their damage as if you were blocking yourself. So it reduces the damage taken by the shield's hardness, and then the ally and your shield take the remaining damage. Really good feat. Smite is really simple and really, really cool. For 1 action, you designate a target that you are going to smite with your Holy Conviction, and until the start of your next turn, you get +3 damage to all attack rolls that land on that target. This increases to +4 damage once you are a master with your weapon. Now, where this feat gets amazing is that if the creature takes a hostile action against you while it is smited, the duration extends an extra round, and as long as it continues to to be hostile, the duration will keep extending. So 9 times out of 10, you are going to mark a creature with Smite, and you are just permanently dealing +3 damage to that target for the rest of combat. Phenomenal. Because it doesn't even necessarily need to be hostile towards you. If it's out there fighting the fighter up front and you can smite it, if it attacks the fighter, that's still attacking your ally. That is still a hostile action towards you and your group, which extends smite's duration. It's just a permanent damage bonus that costs an action. Amazing. Level 8, Advanced Deity's Domain. You get the Advanced Domain spell from your deity that I'm not going over in this video. Again, there's too many. Greater Cruelty is a nice little upgrade to the Cruelty feat. Now, when you spend 2 actions to cast Touch of the Void and they fail their save, instead of becoming Enfeebled 1 for 1 minute, you can choose to make them Clumsy 1 for 1 minute, or Stupefied 1 for 1 minute, and all of these get upgraded to a value of 2 on a critical failure. So this allows you to target either their strongest or weakest ability modifier, so like if you're fighting a giant, you could make it Clumsy to reduce its armor class even lower, or you can Enfeeble it to reduce its damage and accuracy. This makes Touch of the Void a lot more versatile, and remember, it's still inflicting that -2 to armor class as well. But keep in mind, the -2 status penalty to armor class will not stack with the -2 status penalty to armor class from Clumsy 2 if they critically fail. But it will last longer than the Touch of the Void penalty. Greater Mercy. This is a feat that obviously upgrades Mercy, but it's designed really well. Just by taking Greater Mercy once, it upgrades all of your selected mercies. So if at this point you've selected Mercy of the Body and Mercy of the Mind, then just taking Greater Mercy the one time upgrades both and adds new conditions you can counteract. For Body, it adds the Drained condition, which is pretty hard to get rid of at times, and the Slowed condition, and once you are character level 16, you can also get rid of the Stunned condition. Mercy of Grace adds Immobilize, Restrained, and Slowed, and then at level 12 it adds Petrified, and then at level 16 it also adds Stunned. And Mercy of the Mind adds Confused, Controlled, and Slowed. And once you are level 16, it also adds Stunned, but more importantly, it adds Doomed. Doomed is one of the hardest conditions to remove in this game, and being able to counteract it with Lay on Hands is wild. Remember, if any character ever reaches Doomed 5, they're dead. Doomed 6 if they have Die Hard. So being able to just remove Doomed 3 from an ally in the middle of a fight, big deal, very nice. Greater Security, following this whole pattern, upgrades security, and now, as long as your shield is raised, the ally with your spirit shield following them gains the full armor class bonus from your shield. Additionally, even if they are across the battlefield, as long as Spirits of the Shield is still active, if they take a hit, you can activate Shield Block to have your current shield block for them no matter where they are. It still hurts your shield like normal, but that's super cool that you can like shield block from 60 feet away if they have your focus spell on them. Very cool. Heal Mount. This obviously increases your ability to heal your mount. Now if you use Lay on Hands on your mount specifically, it heals for 10 hit points per level instead of 6. That's almost double. That's really, really strong. Quick Shield Block, a very, very good feat that gives you a bonus reaction every single round to specifically use Shield Block. So now you can use your champion's reaction and Shield Block both every single round. Feats like this are really good. 10th level has a lot of good stuff for champions, and picking one feat from this is gonna be hard. Well, not that hard. Second Blessing is not that great. You pick a second level 3 class blessing of either armament, shield, or speed. If you didn't already pick speed, now's a good time to take it. If you did pick speed, you probably already have the runes that the other 2 boons grant you. Imposing Destrier, your mount becomes a nimble or savage companion following those rules. And just like all nimble and savage companions, if you don't have enough actions to command it, it still gets 1 free action every single round to strike or stride. Radiant Armament is a much needed upgrade for Blessed Armament, specifically this far into the game at level 10. You gain 3 new runes you can etch onto your weapon. Astral, Brilliant, and then if you're Holy, Holy, or if you're Unholy, Unholy. I know, it's very hard to follow. But where this really upgrades the Blessed Armament is with a new activity where you can spend 10 minutes to change the rune you gain from your daily preparations. Oh, you put Vitalizing on there, but you're fighting ghosts? Give me 10 minutes, let me swap it to Ghost Touch. This is super cool, especially because some of these runes have once per day abilities. You don't get that once per day ability back if you swap around, but that does mean you can use sort of all of the runes' daily abilities by swapping between them. Very, very cool interaction. Shield of Reckoning is absolutely bonkers. As a reaction, if an enemy hurts an ally, they're both within your champion's aura, and it meets all of the triggers for both your champion's reaction and your shield block reaction. You can do both for your ally. So not only do you shield block to reduce the total damage your ally is taking, but you then use your champion's reaction to give them resistance to the remaining damage. If you're level 10 and you've got a shield with 8 hardness, then you not only reduce the total damage being dealt to your ally by 8, but you also give them resistance to the damage equal to 2 plus your level, which is 12 at this point. Absolutely wild. That's 20 damage reduction on one reaction at level 10. Oh, and by the way, if you took quick shield block at level 8 to get that extra reaction for shield block, you can use that extra reaction for Shield of Reckoning instead. So you can now Shield of Reckoning and normal champion's reaction both every round. Incredible. Or if you took Blessed Swiftness at level 3, you can take Spectral Advance as a devotion spell instead. I'll be honest, this spell is not that exciting. Spectral Advance costs a focus point and spends 1 or 2 actions. If you cast it this way, you stride once or twice, equal to the number of actions. This doesn't trigger reactions during the movement, and for some reason, you gain resistance to all damage equal to your level during this movement. So I guess like if you run through lava or something? I don't know. I guess it could let you run through a trap safely. And if you have a fly speed or whatever, you can use those during the stride, or if you have a mount, all of these benefits apply to your mount as well. It's fine, which is understandable that the other 2 Blessed level 3 features got better level 10 feats because Blessed Swiftness is already so good. You can also ignore all difficult terrain and greater difficult terrain during this movement, so I guess it's good to really get in there or really get out of there depending on what you need to do. It's fine. It's not bad in any way. Affliction Mercy. Now when you use Lay on Hands for 2 actions upgraded with Mercy, you can counteract any affliction, which is diseases, poisons, and curses. Just gives you even more versatility with Mercy to cleanse your allies of whatever ails them. Aura of Faith. Whether you are holy or unholy, all allies within your champion's aura apply the relevant trait to all of their strikes as well. This is only a helpful feat if you're fighting something that is weak to holy or weak to unholy, but I really like the idea of like a campaign where you're fighting angels and you just raise your sword up and all of your allies' weapons in your aura ignite with like a dark unholy fire. Super cool thematically, and if a fight comes up where you can apply that weakness to unholy or holy strikes, you are popping off. Otherwise, it's just a cool idea for a feat. Blessed Counterstrike is absolutely bonkers. If at any time during the last round you used your champion's reaction to reduce the damage taken by an ally, so this would only be applicable to Grandeur, Justice, Liberation, and Redemption cause champions, then on this next turn you can spend an action to make a melee strike that deals 1 extra weapon damage die, and if it hits, it inflicts a weakness equal to half your level against you and your allies' next strikes during this entire next round. So not only are you dealing a whole extra weapon damage die, but then for the next round, you and all of your allies are dealing 6 bonus damage on all of your strikes. Just keep in mind it does specifically say strikes, so sorry spellcasters, your cantrips are not going to trigger the weakness. Champion Sacrifice grants you a devotion spell of the same name. Champion Sacrifice is a reaction that costs a focus point, but if an ally is taking damage from a source that does not affect you in any way, you can just choose to take all of the damage they would have taken with none of your resistances or immunities applying. So the example it gives is if your ally critically fails their saving throw against a fireball, but you were not in the fireball's blast, if they take 40 fire damage, you can just spend your reaction and a focus point to take the 40 yourself, which if someone like the wizard or sorcerer on the backline just got nuked, you have way more hit points than them, so you can just take that for them. Just remember, you have to use a focus point every time you do this, but if like the healer would be about to go down and you can keep them alive with this, that will change the entire battle. What is worth mentioning is that your allies' resistances do apply. So if you have an ally who has resistance 10 to fire, and they take a 40 damage fireball, then when you use this reaction, you're only taking 30 because the ally reduced it by 10. Devoted Focus. Whenever you refocus, you get all your focus points back instead of just one, which is nearly worthless in the remaster. All this does is say, hey, if you want to get 3 focus points back, it only takes 10 minutes instead of 30, which in a dungeon crawl scenario is probably a lot more useful, but in the grand scheme of most campaigns, 10 minutes and 30 minutes of quote-unquote downtime is not that different. Divine Wall. As long as you are wielding a shield, all squares around you are difficult terrain for your enemies, not for your allies. Just a really good little upgrade, makes it a lot harder for enemies to get away from you and get out of your aura. It also prevents them from using the step action as long as they are next to you, so your fighter, or you if you have reactive strike, can benefit from a lot more free reactive strikes if they ever try to get away. Gruesome Strike is obviously the opposite of the other feat we talked about earlier, and this one is only available for the Iniquity, Obedience, and Desecration causes. If there is an enemy that is taking extra damage from your strikes because they triggered your champion's reaction on the previous turn, you can use Gruesome Strike for one action to attack them, and this attack deals double the bonus damage it would normally do. It's not that exciting, it's usually probably going to be like 2 to 4 bonus points of damage, but what's really important is that they have to make a Fortitude save against your class DC, and if they fail, they are drained 1. This not only reduces their Fortitude saves until their next long rest, but it also reduces their current and maximum health by their level. If you can inflict this on a level 10 enemy, that counts as like 10 bonus damage. The problem here is that regardless of their save, they are immune to Gruesome Strike for the next hour, so this isn't that great. It's like 2 to 4 points of bonus damage, and then maybe draining them 1. If they didn't gain immunity on a successful save, this would be amazing, as you could just keep hammering this in until you finally get them drained 1, and then they become immune. I think that would be fine. It'd be a fun strategy to just drain every enemy you fight as an unholy champion. But as it stands, I can't recommend this feat because if they succeed once, they're immune for the whole day. Sorry, bye-bye, take a different feat. Aura of Determination gives you and all allies within your aura a permanent +1 status bonus to all saving throws against morph, mental, and polymorph effects. This is fine. I feel like the mental effect is where this is going to be most useful. You know, those frightening presences I talked about before, this will give them a bonus to that save. So it's fine. It's a very small bonus to very specific effects, but when it comes up, it'll be useful. Aura of Life. You and all allies within your champion's aura gain resistance 5 to void damage and a +1 status bonus to all saving throws against void effects. If you're fighting a lot of void enemies, this is worth it. If not, void is a very uncommon damage type, so I can't recommend this unless you are specifically fighting like undead style creatures. Aura of Righteousness just gives you a huge advantage against all unholy trait creatures. You and all allies in your aura gain resistance 5 to all unholy trait spells and damage. Additionally, if an unholy creature would be teleported away from your champion's reaction, you just get a free action counteract check to stop it from doing that. The weird thing is there's no opposite aura for this. You know, there's no unholy aura that stops holy creatures, at least not at this level, which is a really strange design choice. And finally, at level 14, you can take Divine Reflexes, which gives you that oh-so-juicy extra reaction every single round, specifically for your champion's reaction. What Divine Reflexes and Quick Shield Block together does mean is you can use Shield of Reckoning 3 times per round. Have fun. Auspicious Mount unfortunately requires imposing Destrier as a prerequisite, which means this is like a 4 or 5 feet chain at this point, but this feat allows you to turn your mount into a specialized companion. You can choose one of the usual specializations, or you can take the unique Auspice specialization for champions only. First off, your animal companion will take on a new appearance based on your deity, looking more like a celestial, fiend, or a servitor, depending on if your deity is holy, unholy, or neutral. And it will gain the holy or unholy trait. Celestial animal companions gain the holy trait, and fiend animal companions gain the unholy trait. It also increases its intelligence modifier by +2 and wisdom modifier by +1. Your animal companion becomes an expert in religion, which is just a really funny sentence, and it also learns the language appropriate to the type of creature it now resembles. Empyrean if you picked Celestial, Chthonian for Demon, or Requiem for Psychopomps. Its maximum hit points increase by 20, and then by another 5 at level 18, and another 5 at level 20. However, if you are a celestial animal companion, it does gain weakness 5 to unholy, or if you are a fiend animal companion, it gains weakness 5 to holy. And finally, it gains a fly speed equal to its land speed, which means finally at level 16, you can be a champion on a flying horse ready to rain down destruction. It's kind of cool. Instrument of Slaughter is some crazy persistent bleed damage. This can only be taken by the unholy champions or the champions that deal bonus damage to targets who triggered their reaction, but if you ever critically hit a target who is taking the bonus damage from your reaction, you also afflict persistent bleed damage equal to 2 of your weapon's damage die. So if you have like no shield and you're just like a great axe desecrator champion, or whatever champion would work best, if you critically strike them, they start taking 2d12 persistent bleed on top of possibly the persistent damage you might have inflicted with your reaction. Fantastic. If you're more of a goody two-shoes, you can take Instrument of Zeal, where if you ever critically strike a target who activated your reaction on the previous round, not only do you deal an additional weapon die of damage, but the target is also slowed 1 for their next turn. No saving throw. Phenomenal. Just a little bit of extra damage and -1 action from the target. If you hit the boss with this, that just reduces their turn from 3 actions to 2, which is crazy. And if you took Shield Warden earlier, you can take Shield of Grace, which if you ever use your shield block to protect an ally, then the remaining damage that gets through the shield can be divided evenly between your ally and yourself. So you can choose to say, oh, they can handle 40 damage, they'll be fine. Or, no, they can't handle 40 damage, we're gonna both take 20 instead. Really, really nice feat. Rejuvenating Touch is a passive permanent upgrade to your Lay on Hands. Whenever you use Lay on Hands, on top of restoring hit points, it also gives 10 temporary hit points, and then gives 10 more temporary hit points at the start of your allies' turns for the next 10 rounds. Just remember, temporary hit points don't stack, so this just becomes like a little 10 hit point buffer for any damage they might take every single round. Phenomenal little upgrade, I highly recommend. Swift Retribution. If you ever activate your champion's reaction, you become quickened on your next turn, giving you a whole extra action to stride or strike specifically the triggering enemy. And it is worth mentioning the stride does need to be used to move towards that enemy. I don't know how exactly this works if the enemy dies before your turn comes around, but this just gives you extra action to say, no, 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 no. Fuck you in particular. And Ultimate Mercy is obviously an upgrade to your Lay on Hands Mercy, where if a creature has only been dead for 1 round and you use Lay on Hands on it, it returns to life wounded 1 with 1 hit point. And then once it comes back to life, then it gains the rest of the Lay on Hands effects, meaning you can restore 108 hit points restored. So it restores them effectively to 109 hit points as long as they've only been dead for 1 round. Now, there are a couple restrictions here. You cannot bring back a target that died to something like Disintegrate, that just eliminated their body from existence, or any effect with the Death trait. The Death trait makes it final, and your Ultimate Mercy is not strong enough to bring them back. Lots of Lay on Hands support at level 18. No Touch of the Void support at level 18, which feels kinda bad for those unholy champions. Level 20, let's see what's big here, starting with Armament Paragon. Armament Paragon, an upgrade for the Blessed Armament champion that now gives you basically the highest level version of all the runes you can put on your weapon, and you can change runes on your weapon for a single action rather than just 10 minutes. This is cool, but comes a little bit too late in my opinion. The Blessed Armament only gets the 1 upgrade at like level 10 or 12, whenever that was, and then doesn't get a single other upgrade until level 20. You're going to be way better off installing your own runes on your weapon, and then maybe if you're level 20, erase a rune so you can start replacing it and using whatever you want. It's fine, it's just way too little too late for the Blessed Armament. Now, Sacred Defender is a level 20 feat. Holy cow. You gain resistance 5 to all slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage, and if the source was an unholy creature, that resistance increases to 10. But where this feat pops off is that from now on, any creature that targets you and gets a natural 20 does not increase their result by 1 stage. Whether this is good or not is going to depend on what you're fighting. If you're level 20 and you're fighting a bunch of level 18 creatures, them nat 20ing would definitely crit you. Now it might not. If you're fighting a single level 21, 22 boss monster, this isn't going to do anything because their natural 20 plus their attack bonus is still probably going to be in crit range. But still a really cool feeling if the GM goes, that's a natural 20, and you get to say, cool, I don't care. Shield Paragon, only if you have a Blessed Shield. You always count as having your shield raised. You no longer have to spend an action ever raising it. It is permanently raised. If your shield would ever be destroyed, instead it vanishes to your deity's realm where they fix it for you, although even though they're a godly being, it still takes them until your next daily preparations to give you your shield back. But what is nice is that any shield you find or have, you can spend 1 minute infusing the max level Blessed Shield bonuses onto it, so you can just keep like a backlog of little bucklers in your backpack, and just, oh no, it's broken. That's a new one. Oh no, it's broken. That's a new one. Granted, you can't do that in the middle of an encounter, but still, encounter to encounter, you'll always have a shield. And Swift Paragon is really boring for a level 20 feature. If your allies ever start a move action in your champion's aura, it doesn't trigger reactions. And you're permanently quickened, but you can only use it to step or stride. You can choose to give this to your mount instead. That's it. You get to stride an extra time per turn, and your allies don't get reactive struck. If this were in like D&D 5th edition, it'd be fantastic, because every enemy has attack of opportunity. But in Pathfinder 2e, reactive strike, kinda rare, not gonna lie. We're level 10 in Kingmaker, and we've been reactive struck by maybe like 3 enemies total. It's not that common. Maybe at higher levels it's more common. I will say Swift Paragon, bad feat. Boy, I really hate when these really long class guides end on like a nothing feat. I feel like that happens way more often than I'd like it to, and it's because I hold level 20 feats to such a high standard. Level 20 feats, you are like a god, Your group of 4 party members could take on like a demigod-like deity that is rampaging the world, and you probably will, and so being able to stride an extra time, not that exciting. But that is the champion. You can see why I recommend archetypes for the champion. A lot of their abilities are really situational and based on their reactions. As long as you just pick up your reaction feats, those are the most important ones. Everything else is just sort of icing. If you really want mercy, cool. If you really want cruelty, cool. But there's a lot more exciting archetype feats you can take to augment your champion in a lot of cool ways. But that's just my 2 cents. Maybe you're out there loving everything the base class has to offer, in which case, good for you. I love that for you. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a huge shout out to every member of the No Net One's Patreon page for supporting me, and a special thank you to World's Tallest Hobbit and David Palais for taking 2 of the 4 one-shot game slots available on the Patreon. If you're interested, check out the link in the description. Thank you all so very much for your constant support. I appreciate y'all so much. I'll see you in the next video. That's not my outro. How many times can I mess up my outro on this channel?